Thanks, John. I guess I better get smarter if it's only in the last 3 years. Really appreciate the really appreciate all of you taking the time to be here. These folks do not need another introduction. Their resumes and work really an innovation for the industry speaks for itself. So I'll try to set them up with some intriguing and curious questions. And potentially we can keep our answers fairly concise, but we can maybe even have time for a question or two from the audience and get down to networking. But as John mentioned, cities are down zero for climate adaptation, obviously, from natural disasters, floods, heat waves, infrastructure collapse, energy shocks, but also massive opportunity zones where some of the most exciting solutions are emerging, powered by AI, advanced materials, nature-based solutions, clean energy, and other systems. So today, that's what we'll be exploring a little bit more deeply in our conversation. And so, John's already introduced the panelists, so I just want to kick it off to everyone. Can you just please give us a literally 1 minute rundown on the current state of play in your world right now? What are some of the biggest risks or challenges that we're seeing, and how do either your specific solutions, company, technology, or an interesting trend that you're tracking address this problem? I know 1 minute is very challenging, but given the state of play, what's your world in 1 minute? Let's just start from this side of the shadow and work all the way down the line. See.
No. Thank you. Brad, and glad to be here to talk with you along. Very important topic about cities on tomorrow or how to reshape cities. As you already introduced, I'm part of a big group. So it's a French conglomerate working in different sectors: construction, real estate, rail, roads, telco, media, and also energy systems. And then for us, I think the most challenge today is how to break silos, to integrate those different kind of sectors and different systems to rebuild cities. Because cities is a lot of complex systems, and we had to work together with the different stakeholders and unifying those different sectors to be able to rebuild into or to build those new cities of tomorrow. So breaking silos is an important challenge for us today. I'm Tim Caffrey with SEG, Sam Symmetry, based in Bangkok, Thailand. I'm also with Cubic 3D, which is one of our portfolio companies. So speaking from the investor side and the entrepreneur side, I think one of the challenges highlighted by many of the panelists is bringing capital in to move some of the projects forward. There are a lot of companies that are at that stage where they can start to scale the technologies and really be meaningful, but they're facing a lot of now due to the geopolitical environment. So that's, I think, the top challenge that I see. And it affects changing cities, it affects changing agriculture, it affects changing so I'll talk about solar first. I think one of the biggest challenges solar has is segmentation. Every project is a boutique project, is a one-off project, and that close down these projects and keep the costs high. One of the ways by which this problem can be solved and is a promising solution is if we can industrialize the retrofit. Think of it, think of broadband. Initially, it was like home to home, messy wiring, and all those things. But once it was industrialized, it was very fast to deploy it. Solar needs to go through a similar kind of a journey where every process in that cycle is standardized. Hence, so that like when people want to go solar, it's a really fast process. Hello, I'm Gavin. I'm focused on waste. No matter where we talk and then develop, there's one basic commodity that comes out of our living, and that is waste. I'm looking specifically at the moment on plastic waste, where I can degrade all plastic up to 1.7, whereas today's recycling method only allow 9% of plastics to be recycled. But you'll find that plastic is invading every opportunity in our life. It's in our body, in our brain, it's in the fish we eat, it's in the cattle that's on the pasture, it's just got an epidemic level. And I think the greatest opportunity to that, the plastic is not going anywhere. It's a fantastic product, it's cheap, and it's something there that I don't want to change. I want to partner with you and say, look, I can grade the useful byproducts using uh, mycelium, which is my focus. Mycelium are the metabolic conditions of the organic world, and they can actually use plastic as a food. So pretty much an exciting opportunity of creating various byproducts and leaving no microplastics that's in the environment.
Hi, I'm Dan from Harlem here. So my focus is on electric vehicles. We're a United Dynamism business that makes electric motors and battery packs, put them into vehicles like trucks and RVs and different vehicles. China sold $80,000 commercial vehicles, 80,000 vehicles that are electric last year. In the United States, it was less than 1,000. The country was doing pretty good on passenger car inflation, but in trucking and being in we're behind Europe, who has mandates forcing people to electrify. But we're really behind China that has electric vehicles at the same price as gas and diesel vehicles. And at Harbinger, that's where we are. We can consider all the vehicles at price basis and kind of electrify that.
Thank you all. That's very, yeah, it's fascinating feedback. To tie it all together, let's zoom out and think about resilience city as a holistic concept. So just I'll turn it back to you. You were telling me earlier about we living avenues concept and how this is a sort of an integrated strategy of biodiversity, community, water, energy. Um, I've read certainly holistic city design. You hear this term, it often seems like a pie in the sky idea, but rarely actually integrated. You mentioned as one of your key pain points of silos. So, what silos do you see being most entrenched? And what systemic shifts are needed to kind of make this holistic resilient city concept real?
So yes, indeed. So internally, the we group indeed last month, June the last year, an internal work regrouping our different subsidiaries, so the different sectors, to bring a good view about what is our vision about cities of tomorrow. And then, so I have a copy, the book name. Of course, I have other copies, and for those who are interested, I can share the link for the virtual book also. Yeah. So this vision called Living Avenues. So what is Living Avenues? So it gives you a kind of internal portfolio of how we can imagine the future of cities, integrating the energy management, water management, biodiversity management, and also community living. So those are our internal expertise from we group, but also we're looking our external innovation ecosystem. We can bring together more than 100 solutions that are already existing today to build or rebuild those cities and to ensure the resilience of those infrastructure that we're expecting for tomorrow. So the thing for us is, I mean, we realize it's this internal work that solutions are already here, and my colleagues here will show this that solutions are already different today, but we are still having problem or too difficult to implement and to change and to I don't know, I mean, real bring this transformation and bring those impactful innovations in our real worlds. So for me, thanks for your question. The most difficult silo today to resolve is about a mindset changing for I don't know, public policies or public governments or maybe private also that can help us on that in terms of permitting, for example, or procurement, because the way of traditional permitting, traditional procurement are done today is still by silo. And it's, all time it's different bid by law So it's difficult to integrate solutions, and a lot of time the book of specifications is already done, and we cannot change this book of specifications. And book of specifications is usually done by silos. Then it's difficult to integrate solutions, mixing those different sectors. So maybe I don't have the answer today, but I think this is the most difficult problem now. When we started this work, the main question for us was what are the solutions? Because most of the time there is something that could help us to perform better or not. And the answer for us is yes, solutions are here. It's not a problem of technicity or feasibility. Of course, we can still improve our technical solutions and we can find other better solutions, but how to use those solutions. So this is the difficult today.
Yeah, really appreciate you tackling. This is a very big topic, and I'd like to dive further into it, perhaps with some comments on actually how we can address these silos of policy and other infrastructure areas. But I want to also address the technical issues of even implementation. So, Ankit, go back to you. You mentioned your one of the biggest pain points facing, especially the solar industry, is fragmentation, and often solar is absolutely a rooftop to rooftop kind of one-off installation. How does AI and technology like this ensure that we can maybe mass retrofit existing buildings, for example, and do away with some of the fragmentation in the industry?
Uh, so I don't really in the presentation as well. I think one there's shift starts to happen there when we have the digital workers performing the various tasks like permitting, interconnection, maybe procurement of equipment. What would start to happen is that a lot of solar businesses would start to look alike. The processes of business A would look like very similar to processes of business C, which essentially would be something like right now it's like solar is like getting a custom tailor made suit. And from there, it needs to go to a IKEA prefab kind of a scenario. So as these agents come into the picture and as they start to work in tandem with each other, wherein one agent hands over the work to the next and then to the next, what would happen is that the process of fragmentation would start to streamline a lot more, and solar businesses would be able to deploy at a much faster rate uh, in a very standardized format.
Thank you very much. Go to Tim now. From your expertise, living and doing business not only globally but especially in Asia, but really across all the global construction sectors. What are you seeing in SCB in terms of the biggest climate resilient gaps, and where can either technology or materials, whether that be innovation based and nature based systems, make the fastest impact?
That's the 8% of world oil. It means a lot of cement all over the world. And what SEG has found is that we've gone from our Gen 1 to Gen 2 to Gen 3 reduced CO2 footprint cement. We've seen that even in a downturn, more people are specifying vinegar cement for. So we're seeing increased demand, and that makes good business. One of the challenges on cement is how to transition the overall cold chain. We've made some investments in some disruptive technology that can bring the CO2 footprint down to almost zero. So those are the technology companies that can completely eliminate the CO2 footprint. That would be a major benefit for um, developing economies because there's still a lot of construction going on. When you look at where buildings are going to be built in the future, Africa, India, South America are places where there's still a lot of construction going on. And each year, humanity built a city about the size of New York City because they're all concentrated.
and more than half of the buildings that will be used in 2050 well, have not been built yet. There's a significant amount of construction going on, and it's a huge opportunity for companies to innovate
I didn't realize that that half of the building is like 2050. All right. I want to turn it over to Gavin. So, I challenge everyone in the audience to say sometimes that mycelium is a metabolic magician. This is a great line. Um, but as you were saying, so your big pinpoint plastic waste is literally everywhere. We don't even want to think about it too deeply, but we must. It's everywhere. Contaminated land as well, the other types of waste are of course major contributors to urban environmental and climate risk. And natural systems do have an increasingly important role. I've heard some snaps in the audience when you were talking about this in urban resilience. So can you please describe these metabolic magicians and how Ceratitude uses mycelium to break down plastic, especially, as well as other waste remediation, so removing harmful pollutants from our water, soil, and so forth.
Okay. So mycelium are solution structures of mushroom. So basically those in specific areas where there's high carbon content and the trees that have fallen over, those are the ones that absorb a lot of carbon in their lifetime and being the big carbon sequester around, and now they've fallen over and they're starting to system. Now fungi didn't exist that tree would just last forever, whereas now fungi they then start breaking down and consuming the carbon out of that out of that thing. So pretty much that's what carbon cycle and oil and circulating around the market. Um, that's another one. Uh, that means like and people what they have to do is solve the whole that thing with the full part, the practice of the people. And Uh, no much of that that's left over and actually the whole molecule broken down and consumed. Now, when you look at different types of mycelium, there's some mycorrhizal fungi that I'm looking at. You can see they actually form symbiotic relationships with trees. So if you planted a tree with actually mycorrhizal fungi in it, those fungi, those hairs, part of a normal root structure. So your tree is looking for nutrients to survive in the hottest conditions. This is kind of why we're looking at super fungi, with the contamination of heavy metals, arsenic, uh, calcium, all different types of contamination in the land. They can actually go out and look for those nutrients. The whilst it's looking for the nutrients, it's also absorbing all the contamination. So the core tree comes with key, like of that hard drive of storing all the chemicals in the land and allowing that land to regenerate and become organically, activated. So a lot of potential for that because the current structure on remediation of land, taking off the first species of the content of the soil and distributing it over a wider range of land so the concentration of the contamination uh, uh, yeah. So, so it's a viable option. And it seems that we planting in Butte, Montana, the Doug firm, and that look, it can live for 99 years, over 100 years. It's 100 years of decontamination of that land. And without without the positive, well, with the positive of cleaning oil, cleaning air, cleaning the soil, and cleaning water. And that can add to a barrier. The contaminated water come down towards the water table so that you absorb that water with the contaminant and then cleaning that water. So it's an amazing stunning filter and it's a method.
Well, thank you so much. What I find fascinating about the experts on this panel is a lot of these conversations can sort of flux back and forth in between adaptation, mitigation, back and forth. So let's talk a little bit about this, moving beyond sort of giant all concrete steel, cement, and mushrooms, although they're pretty. Um, Ben, you were telling me some staggering numbers. Not only the 80,000 trucks, being vectored in China versus U.S., but also just how many trucks, for example, enter New York City daily. I think you were telling me 120,000, something in this range. So when we think of 120,000 trucks entering New York City daily, this is 80% of noise, which is, you know, imagine the noise we're making just in this room. We've all been on the street, as well as CO2 emissions. What is the impact of electrifying those streets? Because we start thinking about the electrification of everything on emissions, noise, public health, and what barriers remain. And you can speak in a broader context. It doesn't have to just be New York, but
Yeah, I'm from California, but I looked up some numbers. So there's a million vehicles in the five boroughs, and there's 125,000 trucks. That's like 12.5%. Because the trucks are 80% of the noise and 50% of the pollution in the city. Our goal this year, we're on track to sell about $100 million of vehicles. This is our first year in production, which is more than the entire country bought last year. And it's just because we have a product that, right? So you will see electric trucks in New York is the world making them, but it's also because the truck will be 50 times more expensive than diesel truck in the past. So even we could do that, so we make that than ourselves. Um, we'll be announcing a large event to this next week that might buy one of the gigantic fleets. And the reason they're buying vehicles from us is not because they're electric and they're decarbonizing the air. It's because it saves up to $10,000. They're saying 20 grand and $10,000. And if you can buy that vehicle at the same price, which is what's happening in China, there's no reason to buy a fuel vehicle. And then you get the benefits of no and but they should ban it and there's no rules what people to be electric in New York City the way in London or Paris have or in countries in Scandinavia. And the prices have been pretty expensive.
thank you. Um, I think you alluded to some of this in the earlier presentation, but also Rich Paul was here from City Hawk. I don't know if he's back in the room yet, but he and I were having a conversation yesterday about the ensuing plan most likely in the next, 3 to 5 years over brownouts, blackouts, extreme grid and increasingly bad grid stress. So going back to this topic of agentic AI, but generally the combination of solar and AI, how can this help cities prepare for that grid stress and ensure clean, reliable power, especially during extreme weather events?
So I think at a certain level, the solutions are already coming, wherein solar panels are generating the power, and most of the buildings are starting to build storage battery inside the system. So the buildings have started to become a self-sustaining system of both generating power and storing it as well. Guaranteed, it's not able to take care of 100% of the power, but talking about scenarios like you are of extreme weather, I think where AI would come into the picture is where it will be able to smartly handle maybe 100 or 500 or maybe 1,000 different buildings and understand the energy requirement of each of those and be able to smartly, split power between different of those buildings. So instead of hitting 1,000 different buildings managing by themselves, AI would be looking at it as like a city level grid and managing that energy. I think that's where AI would be extremely useful. There have been solutions around this, wherein microgrids have come into the picture. Uh, you know, virtual grids are also something that we are talking about, but the solutions are still not there yet. Which I think AI would be able to provide. That it will be a very smart, efficient, almost like a living organism, where the power would be moving across different buildings, different infrastructure, all managed by these technologies.
That's a really interesting product on your market run. I hope to see that very soon, and the technology will be contributing to it. Tim, so in addition to your role, of course, at FCD, you mentioned during the introduction, you're the interim CEO of CWTV. I think we've heard different angles of how efficiency can be bolstered in the solar space and other areas of electrification. How does PVP's technology specifically allow for um, generally better either installation of efficiency or how does it contribute to the solar, efficiency?
Well, Cubic is working on tandem photovoltaics. So it's tandem meaning that it uses perovskite as the top layer, which absorbs the photons from the visible light, convert those into electricity, and then has underneath a silicon layer, which takes the infrared. You have two photoelectric materials in one panel. That will put the channel efficiency at approximately 30%, which is a major increase, which will help the rooftop because the math then works better on rooftop. Right. And then you can put more solar into rooftops in cities, in residential areas outside of cities. This technology is a major boost to the overall electricity production.
Um, and the cities are definitely the adjacent vacuum. It's very much an ecosystem, as many of you have been alluding to. So I'd like to move back towards the nature side of our conversation and discuss a bit of biodiversity, pollution, circularity. Um, Gavin, I'll turn it back to you. Maybe we're doing pretty well on time. I want to leave time for audience questions, so maybe brief like 2 minute answers. When you're talking about using mycelium to degrade plastic, what are the byproducts of this in your system? I was curious whether they're safely reusable. We don't actually have that much time. We're only at 5 minutes. Are they safely reusable? What industries might absorb them? For example, materials, agriculture, manufacturing, any of these. Maybe 2 minutes. Yeah, maybe 1 minute.
I can keep it short and sweet. Um, Currently, the main byproduct of the process is an organic compost that's high in mycelium, which is high in protein. So currently, our idea is to use the organic compost in additional farming solution, and then as we go on, then you'll get additional products coming out of the mycelium, food livestock, fish, and all that. And then, of course, there's new exciting products coming out of Europe based on mycelium, going in drywall. Uh, yeah, and several installation ones that are coming out, and that those are exciting products. Even a mycelium leather, which has been blowing my mind.
Thank you for the quick answer. You know what? I want to turn it over. We're going to just do a lightning round really quick. I did want to get deeper into the policy, uh, especially policy discussion of what everything is so in flux right now with the IRA, decision making. I also want to go, I encourage the audience to go up to these people after the panel. Can you each just do a literally 30 second to 1 minute wrap up statement that will be a spicy teaser so that folks in the audience can come network with you? And it doesn't necessarily have to be about policy, but just a quick one liner on what you want to talk about next, what's lingering in your mind, what's first and foremost, and how the people in this room who might be policymakers, family officers, or other fellow innovators can help you out with. So I'll just pass it on down the line to people very short on time, unfortunately.
Partnering is very briefly, I think the next step about policy regulation and so on is how we can work together to bring more and more demonstrators and to bring more and more innovation concrete into the field to test it and after this to go to scale. So then we can discuss which kind of partnerships or which kind of co-creation we can bring together to accelerate those innovations to transform our cities. I think the built environment needs policies that will encourage the use of low carbon materials, the use of recycled materials, the use of solar panels on the roof, and energy storage, all embedded into buildings that will be built. I think solar definitely would have to go beyond the crutches of incentives. When we're talking about horizon, say about 2050, in the next 25 years, there would be regimes which would be pro solar, there would be regimes with the anti solar. I think solar for itself has to stand on its own two feet, that returns are predictable because investors at the end of the day are looking for predictable cash flow rather than headlines.
My next focus is around community building and community awareness. Because at the moment, plastic apathy, apathy is high. If you saw a plastic bottle on the side of the road, I would say 99% of the people would walk past, and there would be that one person that would pick it up and throw it in the trash. We want to turn those numbers around. We want to make sure that 99% of the people pick up that plastic bottle and put it into the trash, making sure that we get some sort of community feedback and community involvement, and then community reward. So if you throw away your plastics are increasing, the community can see benefits out of it. And that's kind of our community process of like a public-private partnership involving communities and government going forward.
We started our renewable formula island under the premise that by being vertical integrated, you can sell the vehicle at the same price as provided in Venice. So I think it's center, I think it makes
It's just spicy. These folks have so much more to say, so I really encourage you to come up to them, ideally outside the door or down in the ballroom for networking, because we have one more panel. Thank you so much, all of you, for your insight, for the conversation. And Juan will be here to announce the final and last panel of that evening, I believe. Thank you again. Huge round of applause.